Hey everyone, this is Steve Rosenberg with Mynd Property Management, and I am here in Houston with Margo Broughton. Margo has been a property manager for 37 years in the industry, and she is in the Houston division of Mynd. Margo, thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So today what I want to talk about is the top things that cost investors money.
Sure.
And I put a caveat on that to go, do they really cost them money? That's perception, right?
Sure.
Some of it is just part of doing business, I think, my personal opinion.
Sure.
So let's go with what are the things that do cost investors money, and then we can kind of expand on them. Can you give us a rundown on that?
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is it's different for different investors.
Absolutely.
And then when you have a brand new investor, obviously some of these things they don't know to anticipate.
Right.
So I picked what I thought were the top three things.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a good point. And for those watching, you may have different things that you think could be costly, and maybe these are just part of your business model. And again, this is just to educate you so that you understand that there are different costs. And again, to me, it's all about perception.
Sure, absolutely.
So what's the number one?
Well, what I chose as the number one is the leasing fee.
Okay.
Because there's always going to be a leasing fee.
Right.
And most owners, especially if they're new, new investors, they don't know to anticipate this.
They don't factor that into their costs.
Exactly. And then it hits them and they go, oh my God. So in the Houston market, for example, our leasing fee industry-wide, whether you lease the house yourself, whether your management company leases the property, whether you have an outside realtor, whatever it is, you have to pay the realtors.
Yep.
And then in the Houston market, it's a full month's rent.
Right.
So you definitely need to have that budgeted in ahead of time.
And a lot of times, if you're not planning on that, now you've had a vacant property, you haven't been getting cash flow, now you got it rented and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get this money, and the agent or the management company says, well, wait a second, that first is mine. So now you're not making any money until month 2, and maybe you didn't plan for that.
Right. And what I hear sometimes, especially with newer investors, is, well, wait a minute, I thought the management company took care of it.
I thought that was part of my fee.
I hired you.
Yes.
And of course, we have to pay the realtors.
Yeah, somebody has to do the work.
Right.
And what I would say is, even if you wanted to do it yourself, you've got to value your time.
Right.
And so you've got to say, what is my time worth? And maybe it's not worth as much as the 1 month's rent, and you want to do it yourself, and you have the ability to market it and do the credit check and the background and all that. That's fine. But again, there is a value that has to be associated with doing that. Now,
absolutely.
In other cities in Texas, there are other prices that they charge, and that's just what the industry is.
Yes, and the lowest I've seen out there is about 50% of a month's rent.
Yeah.
So in Dallas area, it usually runs about 75% of 1 month's rent. Houston, it's 100%. But you know what? You brought up a really good point, Steve. The vetting of the tenant.
The vetting of the tenant.
So if you don't have a professional management company doing that for you, you may miss something.
Absolutely.
And that can be very serious and certainly cost you far more money down the road.
Absolutely.
By not doing that really well.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Now, okay, so the first one is the leasing fee. What's the second one?
The next one that I picked was the make-ready expense.
Okay.
So in between tenants, let's say, one tenant moves out, before the next tenant moves in, you're always going to have to do some kind of a make-ready.
Okay.
And probably the most expensive piece of that is painting.
Yeah.
So you can't really do touch-up paints and make them look good.
Yeah.
So we do corner to corner.
Okay. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah,
for people?
absolutely. So if your one wall is marred up, you don't want to just paint over the marred area.
Okay.
You're going to want to go from seam to seam.
Okay.
Where it can make it look a little bit better.
Makes sense.
So, but if you need to do a full paint, that's a lot of square footage in most cases.
Paint's not cheap.
And paint's not cheap, and the labor's not cheap. So it can be expensive. So setting aside money for in-between tenants.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, now you're going to have to lease it again.
Yep. So now
that's
there's
another leasing fee.
Yeah.
So now you've got the make-ready cost plus the leasing fee.
Yeah.
So, and what I tell investors is, don't step over dollars to pick up pennies.
Absolutely.
And I've heard you say that
absolutely,
a million times.
absolutely. And cheaper's not cheaper.
Right.
You buy cheaper paint, you spend the money, you put the paint up on the wall, and now it doesn't go with the rest of the house. It's a lower quality. Now you can't get the value for the rent because the house does not look good.
Yeah.
Now you're upset because you spent money and you may have to spend more money to do it right. Or appliances not matching the property is another one I've seen.
Yes.
And so again, I agree. And I think what this leads to, it's funny because number one leads to number two sometimes, meaning if you don't lease it to the right person and you don't do the background check, now you're going to have an eviction or maybe a make ready, a vacancy, and the vacancy is going to cost you. So if you do number one wrong, you may have to do number two.
Yes, to more of an extent than you
to a larger
would have
extent,
had to.
right? And if you didn't budget any money for this, now it really hurts you because now it's unexpected. Nobody likes when an unexpected cost of a vacancy, a make-ready cost, and a leasing fee all hit you when you're not making any revenue for your rental property.
So you're talking, what, 3 months worth of rent or something like that? That hurts.
By trying to save some money.
That
so
hurts.
it's just perspective. Now, what is the final in number 3?
Okay, the final that I wrote down that I think is probably the most critical is eviction costs. Now, evictions in Texas, I will tell you, are less expensive than most places and relatively quick.
Yes.
But as a very wise person once told me, this is the sandbox we play in. Quoted by
That
Steve
was a wise
Rosenberg.
person. That's right. Yes. And
quoted by Steve Rosenberg. But this is the sandbox that we play in. And what I elaborate on that when I'm talking to owners is, no one likes broken glass in their sandbox, but every once in a while you're going to find some broken glass in your sandbox, and that is an eviction.
And no matter how well you vet a tenant, screen them, there's nothing that says that they don't get laid off.
Exactly.
They don't get divorced, something downsized. All these things happen, and now at the end of the day, they can't pay rent. You have to make a decision, and part of your lease agreement, part of your contract, you've got to go through this eviction.
Yeah.
And many people, they don't want to do it because they're going to hope and pray. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. But at the end of the day, you're running a business.
Absolutely.
And that business states the contract is what's controlling that business.
Right.
Contract says if you don't pay the rent, you have to remove them from the property.
Right.
And again, there's a cost for that, right?
Of course.
There's the forcible detainer.
Yes.
And what are some of the other costs?
So in Texas, our evictions are pretty quick. In fact, how we run it is, if you don't pay by the 3rd, on the 7th, you're getting a notice to vacate, which is the first step in that process. And then we can usually, if you don't pay by the 15th, we're going to file the eviction. Within a week, we'll be in court. The judge will give them 7 days to be out, and that's usually where it ends.
Right.
So you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks just with that piece. Now, if the tenant files an appeal, which doesn't happen very often,
but it does.
You're talking about another month, and you're talking about a $1,200 payment to an attorney.
And now no cash flow coming in from your property, so now you're minus another month cash flow. So again, it's not to paint a dark picture, but again, these are the 3 top things that will cost you money.
Absolutely.
And these are things that I would suggest that you put aside in a contingency that if it should happen, you are prepared financially, so you're not putting yourself in a bad position.
Right. And one thing I would like to add to that, because I think that's really important, is if you have a professional property management company doing this for you, you're going to get the evictions done much faster.
Absolutely.
And much less expensive. The other thing is I noticed that owners that manage their own properties tend to give a little bit more leeway to the tenant.
Yes.
They let them get a little bit more delinquent, and then the tenant believes that, well, if I did it last month, I might as well do it this
Sure.
month. And so then it kind of perpetuates.
Yeah.
So definitely a professional property management company can help you with this. And then I wanted to also mention, because there are a lot of folks out there that might have an elderly tenant. Well,
Sure.
I don't want to evict an
Right.
elderly tenant,
Yeah.
but it's business.
It's a business.
And I will tell you that we just did one of those the other day, and at the same time that I was filing the writ, I was calling the Adult Protective Services to get this elderly tenant some help.
Okay.
So we did it,
So it's not always a bad thing
No.
where you're putting them on the street. And
Absolutely.
again, it's a business.
It is a business.
We don't want to make people, where they don't have a roof over their head. But at the end of the day, we also have a responsibility to the owners
Absolutely.
to make sure that we are doing what we said we're going to do per the agreement.
Sure.
And again, we are held responsible. The owners are held responsible by the banks to have mortgages paid.
Absolutely.
So it goes on down the line. And again, so, just to recap here, there are costs associated with owning a rental property.
Sure.
There are going to be expenses. And Margo, the top three are...
I think, now there's more.
There's
there was
more,
there was
right.
a lot to choose
Yes.
from. But in my opinion, I thought leasing fees,
Okay.
make-ready costs,
Yep.
and evictions.
There you go. All right. Well, if you want to know more, you can go to our website at mind.co. So it's MYND.co. Also, if you want to find us on Facebook, we have the Mastermind Real Estate Investment Club. And you can find us on Facebook as well at Mynd Property Management. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.